On, so just be patient. It's going to take another 2 or 3 minutes. Right. Do we have the right quorum?
Your choice.
Yeah, we're going to start with a briefing, I think, until a couple of our other people come back from other committees. Ms. Foxworth should be in momentarily. She's printing off the interline copies. That is the most substantive of the two. Do you have it? The reprint?
The reprints are coming around, but they're still being printed.
I think there's a new reprint with the Hester amendments, proposed Hester amendments, interlineated, I believe.
If you want to start with the local bill, I'll stick to those. The other one is bigger, takes longer,
Sure.
and there's more running.
Of these.
Well, both, but these are first.
No, they're, yeah, Ellis is in a House hearing, Lamb's in a House hearing. I don't know where Mary is. Okay, why don't we then start on, right, she's, yeah. Okay, let's start with 1202. You heard the bill yesterday, the day before, it's all running together. We're going to focus on the proposed amendments that Senator Hester will be offering on Friday. Committee counsel?
All right. So in this reprint to HB 1202, let's start on the first page. The page 1 indicates that this bill, if passed, will be an emergency bill. Technical language extends until page 8. On page 8 of the Senator Hester amended reprint, in terms of the Cyber Preparedness Unit within the Department of Emergency Management, language is removed that would have required the assessments that were developed with local governments, that would have required them to go through the State National Guard and the federal CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That language is removed.
We'll stop there, read page or two, and take questions, but not debate quite yet.
So super briefly, why do we need to be an emergency bill?
That's a policy question.
Okay,
Well, let's take that afterwards.
okay. So Senator Hester, if you would just explain that. Thank you. Yep.
So we're on page 8, removing language in 2 paragraphs and adding a sentence at the end. Okay.
And
Keep
so,
going.
lines 21 through 24, there was a requirement that full-time staff be distributed to the unit for a 24/7 helpline. That has been removed. There were questions about whether DoIT's helpline does the same thing. So staff won't need to be dispersed within the cyber prep unit. So the distinction between in line, or actually under line 29 on the same page, between the cybersecurity prep plan is removed. I'm trying to point out where that is. With the lines, it makes it a little difficult. So it's on line 27. So there's a distinction throughout both bills between cybersecurity preparedness plan and cybersecurity response plans. So now it's cybersecurity prep response plans that the local governments will get assistance through MDM. So instead of it being 2, it's 1, coordinated within the same. The cybersecurity prep unit's role in identifying resources to complete cyber vulnerability assessments is expanded on after line 29 and before line 30. And yep, that's the end of page 8.
To clarify, the walkthrough we're doing now, these are Senator Hester's amendments to House Bill 1202.
Right, that's
I just
correct.
want to make sure I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
So on page 9, top of lines 1 and 2, there's a reporting requirement that the Cyber Preparedness Unit was required to develop for local governments and on local governments, and that reporting requirement has, well, the development of the reports, not quite a reporting requirement, but developing reports on local cyber is no longer a requirement of the Cyber Prep Unit. again, questions arose as to how duplicative these assessments were. And so paring down the sort of redundancy of the assessments, I think, gets to some of the intent of the drafting. On, after page 8 and before line 9, it says that the unit is required, the Cyber Preparedness Unit is required to support the Office of Security Management. This has also been a request from the administration to make sure that the inner workings between the Department of Emergency Management that houses the Cyber Preparedness Unit and Office of Security Management work together in a way where DO-IT, which is over OSM, and supporting MDM instead of the other way around, because DO-IT has more of the technical expertise. So the unit is going to support the Office of Security Management in DO-IT efforts during emergency response efforts instead of the other way around. This information or this requirement will also be duplicated in the Senate sponsor amendments on House Bill 1346. Going down, after line 25, requires the hiring of 5 new positions within the Cyber Prep Unit. And there are 2 amounts identified in subparagraph 1 and 2. And this is reflected through budget estimates from last year, if I'm not mistaken. So 3 positions for Administrator 3 and 2 positions for Administrator 2 within the Preparedness Unit. And their positions would just be to help further staffing and the generalized requirements of the CPU, which the bill codifies before amendments and as amended. Language of the Cybersecurity Fusion Center was removed.
Okay, I've got a question. I'm confused between the Office of Security Management and the Cyber Preparedness Unit. I mean, my head is spinning with this bureaucracy that's being created. Can you tell me what each does and why the other doesn't do it? I don't mean to use "do it" again, but no, that was a slip. I'm just trying to understand it, and we're adding 5 pins. I'm just, we're building this organization fairly significantly in multiple places. So what is the distinction between the specific responsibilities of the Cyber Preparedness Unit versus the Security Management Office?
So the Cyber Prep Unit has more of a focus towards the local. So MEMA, which was contemplated last year in some of the legislation, would have been that coordinating entity in the event of a local cyber attack, and then to prepare the locals for, or to prepare them for cyber attacks. So the Cyber Prep Unit is specifically local focused, but it retains some sort of connection with the Office of Security Management to get direction from DO-IT. However, CPU is responsible solely for locals, whereas Office of Security Management is more statewide. Within the office connects to DO-IT, so that's the changes that are made to the Cybersecurity Council, which oversees the policy changes. There are reporting requirements that the actual state agencies have to report to OSM that don't exist within the Cyber Preparedness Unit. So MDM houses the Cyber Preparedness Unit, and that's actually current law. This is codifying the Cyber Preparedness Unit because it currently exists. It's in operation now, but MDM is the entity that houses Cyber Prep Unit. Right.
Mr. Chair, I'd first of all like to start off by apologizing. The bills as drafted have created more confusion than actually exists. We're codifying what's already there. The CPU in MDM already exists. It's currently staffed with contractors, so you'd be switching from contractors to staff. There's 2 contractors, and it's not quite enough. Yes, that was, that. I mean, MDM is here. We could ask them. But
Yeah.
could I
Sure.
finish? The Office of Security Management was created in the executive order in 2019, so it's existed since then. It's currently there. It's within DO-IT, And we're just codifying, that. We're adding 2 people to that, which is below the state CISO, 1 person to focus on the state and 1 person to serve as a liaison for the local. So in the back of the report, I don't know if you guys remember from last year, we created a 2-page table, which was in the cybersecurity report at the very end, which clearly outlines what they do and who does what in terms of preparation and who does what in terms of response. MDEM's role currently is preparation and response planning, and that's how we're codifying that role. DoIT's role is at the state level and to some extent at the local level for incident response. So after the boom, as they say, once there's an attack, DoIT steps in.
So, one of the 2 new DoIT people, or the security management, is a liaison with the locals, but we also have an office of 5 people that's going to deal with the locals.
So, liaison might not be the right term, but it's, DoIT's primary role is to support the state agencies and the locals when there's an attack. They set the policy for the entire state. We're using the existing infrastructure within MDEM, who currently has relationships with the 24 emergency managers spread out through the counties, to do the resilience planning, the response planning around cyber. And so there is an existing working relationship between MDEM and DoIT on the policy side. And DoIT then jumps in when there's an incident. And so this person will help to support in a more proactive way what's going on in the, at the locals.
From Cyber Preparedness Unit? Tell us why you need 5 positions.
For the record, my name is Anna Sierra. I'm the Chief Development Officer for MDEM. I'm also the Legislative Liaison, so I am not directly with the Cyber Preparedness Unit, but I'm here to speak on the topic. Based on our assessment of what is required in the bill and what we're currently doing, we understood the legislative intent to make sure that this was a standing unit into the future. Right now, we're funding it through temporary grant funds that end in a year. So we have 2 personnel. We actually have 5 contractor spots. We've not been able to hire all of those positions. So that is the reason for the fiscal note.
And what have you not been able to get done with only filling 2 of the 5 contractor spots?
So right now, we have pretty limited support for local governments. We simply don't have the personnel resources to do the direct support that would be required by this bill, and that has been asked of us currently. There's also requirements to work with school boards and local health departments, and that is something that, again, currently we do not do. We only work with local government units.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Senator Hester, there was something you said, and in my mind, I have it backwards. So I just want to make sure that my brain has it wrong, and that you said that, what I think you said was MDEM does the pre-stuff, pre-problem, and DoIT solves it, steps in and fixes it. That is correct. Okay. I don't know why I thought that DoIT was identifying and warning and preventing, and then MDEM through the MJOC was going to be like riding in with their capes on to like fix things and all that. So in my mind, it was backwards then?
Invite one of the experts to answer your question.
Anna.
We can join.
Because this is a really important fundamental thing. I just want to make sure we're all
Yeah, we agree.
rock solid here.
So currently by statute, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management is responsible for preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation of all hazards. That includes cybersecurity. But that's a big picture piece, right? So DoIT are the technical experts and the leads for a cyber attack for the state. So when it,
And I would just add to that,
Patrick, why don't, can you,
sorry.
yeah.
Yep, Patrick Mulford, External Affairs Director at DoIT. I would also add the policy leads on these. So we see the overall big picture of how things should be prepared. I think we're getting stuck on the word preparedness. Setting a policy is part of the preparation, I would believe, and that's the main thing that is coming from, in this bill, the local cybersecurity director that would be underneath do it.
I think just to add a little, thank you, Senator. To add additional clarity, so from a preparedness perspective, there's the preparedness of protecting networks, where do it is identifying strategy and implementation actions to literally protect the networks and literally protect the systems. MDEM is responsible for all of the ancillary impacts that a network outage would cause. So planning for impacts to hospitals where they can no longer accept patients. Our job is to prepare for and work with counties to understand how to manage or to coordinate resources for a large hospital system impact or for a roadway impact or any other impact. We do this across the board for all hazards. And we look to other state agencies with the technical expertise to help give us that direction and strategy, as well as be the technical leads during response for the particular hazard. So we do this with MDE, with radiological events. They are technical experts. Maryland Department of Health is pandemic expert, and so on.
You know, I'm reading page 8, which falls under the Preparedness Unit. Support local governments in assessment and cyber assessment, cybersecurity training, technical training resource, cybersecurity continuity of operations. That sounds like all do it. As what I heard you say, they do the cyber stuff and you do the effects on the response, hospitals or this or that. So I don't understand on page 8 that falling under you when it really is under do it. I mean, your answer, which I thought was fairly clear, said you are not really preparing on the cyber stuff. You're dealing with the response and the effects and of those attacks. So I don't understand why all this language is under you and not under do it.
So I think we act as a conduit for the experts that do it, for the technical piece of it, and then we also tackle the rest of it in assistance of local governments.
I have to say, it seems awkward to me, yeah, but, I mean, would you like directly to do it and have to?
No, I think currently the way that things are run are actually being run this way. The local governments come to the Cyber Preparedness Unit at MDEM. They also come to do it, but I think this bill would actually centralize them coming to MDEM to realize that that's their go-to when it comes to cybersecurity preparedness help. That's what in writing this bill, I believe that's what Senator Hester and Delegate Young wanted to do, was to have the locals be able to directly reach out to someone, and that's their emergency manager, who then directly goes to MDEM.
One other question, then I'll pass it on. In terms of their cyber plan before there's an attack, are you reviewing it or are you reviewing it?
I would have to, if it was up to me, and I believe it is I believe it is the Chief Information Security Officer who would be reviewing it, but that was before things have been amended, so I'm not certain.
Does that still go through MDEM first? I'm just, if we want efficiency here and not have too many doors to go through, I think we want to get to a point that makes sense. And I'm not sure by reading this how that plays out. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, as I said, the bill as drafted was a mess. This is the chart, which is on page 54 of the report. It's the same exact chart which this committee reviewed on Senate Bill 69 last year, was signed off on by Secretary Leahy and Secretary Strickland. And what we're doing is trying to codify this existing practice. In terms of the preparedness reports, MDEM currently does those for flooding and earthquakes and pandemics. They also currently organize the tabletop exercises on cybersecurity. So they are doing all of this stuff already. And in terms of efficiency rather than bureaucracy, this is incredibly efficient because these relationships already exist. I've had conversations, and quite frankly, DoIT has a lot of work to do at the state level. And what I've heard in our conversations is that, this is the most efficient way to rely on existing expertise to get things done. They will be setting the policy, but in terms of pushing it out to the locals, that will go through MDEM, which is the current practice on other risks.
The question, if I can restate it, is their cyber protection security plan, who does it go to, who do they submit it to, and does it go to MDEM and they just forward it to DoIT?
The review, so currently there are very few cyber preparedness plans being done, so we're starting from a very low baseline. Okay, so the bill as it is currently drafted and multiply amended has MDEM helping the counties do their preparedness plans. Their cyber preparedness plans based on guidance from DoIT. There is no one, we have struck the requirement for the review. When DoIT was, so the last year in Senate Bill 69, MDEM was helping do them, DoIT was reviewing them. That had a $10 million fiscal note to review every single local entity's cybersecurity repair plans. So not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, we are now supporting the local units of government in developing their plans. We are not at this time planning to review them.
And again, I'm sorry if I'm being a little dense here. If we want to make sure all these local entities are not attacked, cyber attacked, like we saw happen in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, et cetera, and we want to ensure they have a cyber plan, protection, security. One, are we requiring a plan? Does anybody look at them to see that they're high level and are probably going to resist an attack? And if so, who's doing that?
Policy question for you and also for budget and tax. I think this bill is a major step forward in terms of them actually having a plan that is guided by best practice from DoIT and rolled out through MDEM. If we want to add on back in DoIT's review of those plans, that will bump up the fiscal note by $10 million. That said, the governor just recently put in $100 million extra to the cybersecurity dedicated account. So we're now up to $200 million for cybersecurity. So it's a policy question for this committee.
Does it say in this bill that all of these entities we're concerned about must have a cyber security protection, I don't know whether we call it a plan or another word? I mean, is that somewhere in this bill? And can you point it to us?
Page 20, lines 6 through 11 on the House print.
Page 20, line 11.
Lines 6 through 11.
Okay.
Is there a consequence if they don't? I know we're ahead of ourselves now.
Before I go to the vice chair, in this case, the department is,
It's DoIT.
so then the cybersecurity protection unit, whatever the hell that is called, is not involved in this,
So
or is.
I believe it's a difference of preparedness plans and making sure that the local agencies and local governments meet DeWitt's minimum standards to be on Network Maryland, which is the network that most local governments and all of the state agencies are on. So it's basically saying, if you're going to be on our network, you need to follow these minimum strict security standards, or you can't be on our network.
And this does not go through MDM, it goes directly to Do It.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that helps me. Vice Chair, back to you.
Thank you. I'm just going back to what was just flagged, which is page 20, lines 6 through 11. Each unit of local government and any local agencies that use the network established, and I'm reading this for the benefit of those who don't have the paper in front of them, established under subsection B of this section shall certify to the department, and that's Do It, as the chair pointed out, the Department of Information Technology, that the unit is in compliance with the department's minimum security standards. So, Ms. Sierra, you know that we had on the 911 Commission, it was, they're all supposed to be compliant, and then there's a consequence. If they don't, then they get funding withheld, or there's a consequence in some way. This doesn't appear, or am I not seeing it, where if I either don't do the report or I'm not in compliance, what happens to my local government?
I see the photo look
I-
like that.
yeah.
Somebody go to the policy question,
Oh, yeah, it was, that's exactly.
So my understanding is that while it may not be in this bill, in the companion bill about governance, our state CISO has the ability and authority to kick a unit of government off of the state network if they're not meeting minimum compliance standards. So that means they just shut them off.
whether what's in 1346 applies here, we can replicate that language here. There's no objection to that. Okay.
I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense. I wonder if there's some, I'm doing worst-case scenario, because this is a sort of Damocles, right? And we all know that at any day, at any time. So XYZ County says, I don't want to comply with your system. And so Do It says, okay, then you're out of here. There's probably got to be some appeals process. There's got to be some back and forth. It's not like Do It tomorrow can say, disconnect XYZ County. So in that time where they are thumbing their nose and saying, we're not going to comply with your standards, and actually removing them from the system, the entire system could be vulnerable, am I right? If there's one non-compliant actor on our team, that's a keyhole to the entire
Yes,
system, right?
you're correct.
So what's a balance, and I see that MACO's in the room, the Maryland Association of Counties, what's fair to, and we don't want to start opening up all this, I'm sure.
Let's, if we need an amendment, let's prepare for Friday. I don't want to get too far in the weeds here. I think if there is language in the other bill, we could replicate that or come in with an amendment on Friday. I don't want to spend too long because we have
Right. Ms.
lots
Foxworth,
of
maybe we can
lawns.
talk about some
Okay.
reasonable but fast process of accountability. I think that's important.
We were up to page 9, I think, or 10 before we moved to
Mr.
page
Chair.
20.
Mr. Chair, I had some questions on that same issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hester, thank you for pointing to page 54, because I think that was helpful to see that broken down by state, local, and then you broke it down by the different categories: preparedness, prevention, response. So taking that chart and going to page 9 in the bill on the 5 pins, can you just kind of point out where those pins, how they fit into what we already have laid out in this chart? And again, going back to the overall purpose, as I understand, is that whether these responsibilities are assigned to the Maryland Emergency Management Department or to Department of Information Technology, that you're still providing that direct technical support to the locals. I mean, I don't want to lose sight of, I understand, I really actually believe most of these local governments are going to welcome this type of support and assistance because they simply don't have it. And so so as we work through this, because I'm trying to go back to this level on, this is local government cybersecurity, which is the purpose of the bill. Looking at the chart on page 54, looking at the 5 pins, I just want to see, kind of be reassured of, are we doing everything we can to bring those locals where they need to be? And obviously, if there's defiance in that, there might be, we can work with Mako on that, but just one,
Yeah.
this is the whole purpose, right? So that's why I'm trying to see, how do they actually provide that assistance to the local governments?
Yeah, I think that was answered earlier. Those 5 will be under MDEM, this new unit, to coordinate with the 24 jurisdictions and give them support. Is
But
that
then how
correct?
do you divide the administrator 3 and 2? Is
I- I
that some
think-
support?
Senator, I think that's a weeds question.
that's
of-
fine.
I think dividing up what their actual
So all
authorities and
5
job
of the-
description, they're all new pins replacing the temporary positions they've had, contractors. They've filled 2 of the 5. They say they're shorthanded with adding school systems. They need more assistance. Those 5 people, in some variation, will work with the local entities through this unit called the CPU, or something like that, under MDEM, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's continue. Let's continue.
I'll say, just to add, Senator, on the question about the response plans. So we can probably get to it in House Bill 1346, but as amended in the House, there is a distinction between the cyber response plans that DO-IT will develop under the bill in coordination with MDEM versus the minimum security standards that have to be implemented for the agencies and entities that use Network Maryland. So we can point that out when we get to House Bill 1346. All right. Page 10 in HB 1202 is not changing anything from how the bill was postured when it came back to EHE, or came to EHE. On page, sorry?
I think coordinating instead of supporting.
Right, exactly. So it's a mirroring change to House Bill 1346.
Okay.
So instead of the Security Management Department supporting MDEM,
Okay.
OSM coordinates with them. Again, that kind of gets on the hierarchy of DO-IT taking the lead per se and then coordinating instead of leading.
Got it. And 17?
So the cyber prep and response plans, this is what we were talking about, that portion is taken out. So this is a role of the Office of Security Management. So as amended, Office of Security Management will no longer review, certify, or support local governments in developing cyber prep and cyber response plans. The Cyber Preparedness Unit will have that role throughout the amendments.
Bottom of 17?
So before we get to 17, on 16, there's a change similar to what we saw a little earlier. So the report on the local cyber preparedness, that's nixed from OSM's role as well. And that's consistent with earlier language with the cyber prep unit. So on page 17, this just clarifies that any reports that are submitted through OSM has to conceal information that may have cyber vulnerabilities and cyber risks, similar to the language in House Bill 1346 that would have concealed those audits that contain cyber information, state and local audits. So on page 19, so we're in the Department of Information Technology section still. Still. And so this establishes the Information Sharing and Analysis Center within the Department of Information Technology. It's my understanding that this is a codification of that role. And this is similar to the Fusion Center that we removed from this bill. well, the House removed it, and we maintained the removal of the Fusion Center. So the focus of Information Sharing and Analysis Center is, as it's explained, is information sharing toward information sharing across localities. And there's also a federal government role and a private entity piece as well. Similar to Fusion Center being a coordinating entity across federal, local, and state government. Towards the end, there is additional amendment language that'll be added that will clarify how the ISAC will be funded through a budgetary transfer. On page 20, the local reporting requirement for units of local government is moved from 1 year to, as indicated in regulations that the Department of Information Technology establishes. But first, before the, sorry, actually, that's a certification. So page 20, lines 6 through 11. So instead of the local certification happening on the systems at the local level that use Network Maryland, being yearly, the Department of Information Technology is going to develop regulations that will determine how often their usage of the network is certified. And then on lines 14 through 15, local governments, county governments, school systems, and health departments, with the exclusion of municipal corporations, there's this development that has to happen with the cyber prep and response plans. However, instead of that existing every year, that also has to be in conformity with Department of Information Technology regulations. So language in lines 19 through 30. County governments, with the exclusion of municipalities, this portion does not touch on municipal corporations. County governments will no longer have to perform these assessments and will no longer have to report to the office on their information technology capacity. So the cyber prep assessments, cyber preparation reports that has been consistent throughout this bill, that's removed, replaced in part by the Cyber Preparedness Unit within MDEM's responsibility to assist local governments with vulnerability assessments. However, we talk about the Cyber Preparedness Unit and how they're assisting local governments at the local level. That does not include municipalities. So county governments are excluded, county governments are excluded from completing these cyber assessments. That does not include municipalities. But when we go look at the Cyber Preparedness Unit, municipalities also aren't covered within the role of the Cyber Preparedness Unit. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of their assistance with local governments.
I just wanted to speak to a couple of things that council just said. We are striking the requirement for the assessments on page, pardon? So we are striking in this bill the assessments required of local units of government on page 20. However, in the bill that is moving through appropriations and budget and tax, which is called Modernize Maryland, we've shifted the funding, the local support fund, into that bill. There will be the conducting of these assessments, along with wastewater treatment cybersecurity, are the top two uses of that fund. So I just want to say that we're not striking it and forgetting about it. It is now in a different bill. I also wanted to go back to, on page 19, the Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Council said that this already exists. It does already exist within DO-IT. However, it is not supporting local units of government. In our conversations over the course of the year and many joint committee hearings, we heard again and again that the local counties want to be in dialogue, with the state on what threats are coming. DO-IT might be able to speak to this, but my understanding is that the ISAC actually sends, logs and information between different units of government. And so if each one of our units of government have it's not an interchange, but something like that, an integrator.
Yes.
If they have an integrator, they can receive data from the state when things are detected. And this goes back to the point of why this is an emergency bill. We want to make sure that our local units of government are included in the state ISAC, and the money for that can come from the dedicated purpose account in this supplemental this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, first off, I just really want to honor and thank everybody who's been involved with this, and I know you've all put just tons of hours, and so Senator Hester, thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Ms. Foxworth, for all of your work, and everyone at Do It and MDM and stuff. I've got a really global question, so I'm making notes along the way. Global question, Senator Hester. I'm going to be cynical about it's not in this bill, but it's in the other bill. And sometimes stuff happens in a legislative process. And so my concern is, let's say this bill moves and it doesn't have the stuff that we're like being reassured is in the other bill, and then the other bill doesn't move, or it fails in a conference committee, or we run out of time. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, your thoughts about, do we want to have duplicate information in here in the event as a sort of security precaution, belts and suspenders, just in case the other one doesn't work? Should they be standalone and comprehensive? I just would love to have some idea of what the committee believes makes most sense.
We have three choices. We can make a bill conditional and pass it to another bill. We can put the language in the bill just because we don't want to rely on another bill, and it's just the same language appears in two bills. Or we can accept, trust all the bills will pass. There are three options. So we can contemplate that and come up with an amendment on Friday in whatever way or shape we do. Let's finish up on this bill on page 22. We have a fair amount more work to do, and I don't want to keep people very late tonight.
So page 22 is mainly technical. Section 5 indicates the budget language for the ISAC. And then section 6 at the bottom, after line 28, indicates that it's an emergency bill.
And while you haven't had a chance to go through all of them, we have numbers of other amendments from other groups. I know USM and I think a couple of other agencies.
Yes.
Are they in both bills or just in 1346?
They are in both.
Okay. Well, let's not get stuck on those yet. Okay. That's 1202. We're going to pause and do two bits of other business, then we're going to go to 1346. We have a concurrence. Ms. Goodman, is that you?
What we have is
Second from
a
B&T.
preemptive concurrence with House amendments for Senate Bill 228. I believe that they're trying, the House has SB 228. It's on third reader. They would like it for presentment. B&T has already heard those amendments and concurred with them preemptively. I'll remind you that Senate Bill 228 is Maryland Corps program revisions, and essentially it makes significant changes to the Maryland Corps program, including allowing participants to transition to the workforce as well as to an institution of higher education. It basically restructured the board and expanded the program and gave them lots of money. Under the House amendments, first, it makes changes to the board of directors by requiring 2 members to be jointly appointed by the president and the speaker instead of just by the president. And it adds 2 additional members, 1 each appointed individually by the president and the speaker. As a part of the requirements for the ongoing evaluation of the program, the evaluation needs to include an evaluation of the needs served in the community by the program. And finally, it requires the board to prioritize for participation in the program individuals historically underrepresented in higher education enrollment or completion, or by employment by large-scale and community employers or participating organizations.
This is the Senate President's bill that creates the 3 cores. I do have one question. One was a natural resource core. When you mention the amendment of the communities they serve, I mean, are the foxes and the wolves? I mean, I don't know how that applies to that core.
Let's see, let me find my little sticky. So. It says, an ongoing, part of what the board needs to do in the regulations is have an ongoing evaluation of the program to ensure access and effectiveness, including demographics of the core participants, post-program trajectories of core participants, and an evaluation of the needs served in the community by the program.
And again, we're not lead on this, so I put council on the spot. The Budget and Tax has pre-approved the House amendments, and they are asking for us to do the same. That is what is before us. Discussion. Ms. Goodman has explained them. Changes the board, changes the selection between the Speaker and the Senate President, changes a little membership of the board and some accountability measures, by and large, and adds some money.
No, it didn't add any
Oh,
money.
it didn't add money, I apologize.
No, the program itself has lots of money, that's what.
Right. Okay, is there a motion to adopt or concur? I don't know what the right motion would be. Please.
Did you say that it's already gone through Senate B&T and also the
Yeah,
Senate?
so the
Senate
Budget and Tax
President's
Committee,
office?
right. The bill itself in its current posture is past second reading with amendments in the House on the floor. So it's essentially on third reading. They want it for presentment. Presentment is tomorrow, and in order for it to be ready for presentment, it has to, because it was jointly assigned with Budget and Tax as primary and EHE as secondary, the Budget and Tax Committee has looked at those amendments and approved them. That is the current posture that we're doing now. We're voting to either concur with the Senate bill as amended by the House. That would be what we're saying.
So Senate Budget and Taxation is signed off in coordination with the Senate President's office.
I don't know, yes. I don't know what the vote was, but it was unanimous the last time the bill went through, so.
Motion to concur with the B&T recommendation. It's been moved by the Vice Chair, seconded by the Senator Patterson. Discussion. Seeing none, it'll be recorded as a 902 concur as second on the Maryland Core legislation. Okay. We'll go into 1346. There are a couple of bills I do want to vote today. So 15 minutes before our eyes start glazing over, I'm probably going to call to a halt, and then we'll pick this up on either Thursday or Friday, unless we complete it. Okay, we'll need copies of 1346.
So I'll preface this one with saying I may defer a bit to Senator Hester, as the reprints have been a constant work in progress. So, wait, for which, are you looking at HB 1346? So, yes, so the reprint should be dated March 30th. So, right, the Senator Hester amendments are March 30th. Okay,
Receiving is the most recent, with proposed amendments not adopted yet. This is 1346. We just received 1202 moments ago, and yesterday we had an earlier version somewhere. So you can put aside, well, obviously we haven't acted on these amendments yet, so you can either hold on to the old version or not. We're working off of the one you were just given. Okay, Ms. Foxworth, it's all yours.
so first 9 pages are technical. On page 9, there was the Cybersecurity Coordinations and Operations Unit within the the Office of Security Management within the Department of Information Technology. Prior to the amendments that the House adopted, the Cybersecurity Coordinations and Operations Office was in MDM. It was transferred to DO-IT. DO-IT renamed it as a Cybersecurity Coordination and Operations Unit. Similar offices or similar roles as Cyber Preparedness Unit. So that's been removed under the Senator Hester amendments. There isn't a Cybersecurity Coordinations and Operations Unit within OSM. And that's the effect of that's what the language or the strikeouts on page 9 are alluding to.
So the House had this Cybersecurity Coordination and Operations Office.
Right.
In DO-IT.
It was originally in MDM. And then, so as amended, that's right. So we didn't deal with the original bill. So as amended, it was transferred to DO-IT. That's right.
Okay. The House moved it from MDM to DO-IT, and we are now removing it totally.
Right.
Okay. Keep going.
So on page 11, this deals with the roles of the Office of Security Management. This is similar to House Bill 1202, how MDM is going to support DO-IT instead of taking the lead because DO-IT has technical advice. So that's similar.
To coordinating, we got that.
Right. So on page 13, again, the roles of the Office of Security Management in coordination with MDM. So it removes the focus on implementation of best practices that the department develops. It also removes this local connection, so connecting local entities to cyber prep and response. That piece is removed. That's also similar to House Bill 1202. And then in addition, it removes the development of reports on local cybersecurity, which House Bill 1202 also does. When we get around page 15, I will have to speak conceptually on the issues and may invite Senator Hester to chime in on them since the reprint is rather fresh. There's additional language on page 15 that's similar to House Bill 1202 saying that the reports submitted through the Office of Security Management have to redact or conceal, not redact, cybersecurity vulnerable information. On line 7 of page 15 of the reprint, the Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council is codified. So there have been changes to the membership of the council. So, as it was amended, every secretary, every representative from a principal department was added to the council. Now, this adds members of the judiciary and the legislature onto the Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council to it as well. All right. Find my other page here. So there is a requirement for minimum cybersecurity standards. So every entity, so if you recall, House Bill 1346, as it came to us, carved out a few entities from the bill. USM was one. Full carve out, I can find the page of that. Oh, perfect. All right, so SBE, Office of Attorney General, Comptroller, State Treasurer, Legislature, and Judiciary are added to the carve-outs of oversight through DO-IT policy. So with the function of the Senator Hester amendments would say that all of these entities that are listed, all 13 of them, would still have to certify that they meet minimum standards, not necessarily DO-IT standards, but standards that are developed through the federal law as evaluated through a third party. So DO-IT wouldn't be doing the certification. DO-IT would not be doing the evaluation. It would be a third party doing it in alignment with federal standards. However, I'm informed, and maybe DO-IT can speak more to the nuance of this, that DO-IT typically follows federal standards through the National Institute of Science and Technology? Standards and Technology, thank you. Standards and Technology. There's additional language, again, speaking to this conceptually, that removes procurement policy. So approximately page 21. So this was an issue that Department of General Services brought up. And so instead of requiring the procurement policy to be in accordance with Department of Information Technology, it removes that, reverts it to the status quo. All agencies that procure resources, which is all agencies, I would assume, would be able to set their own policies and go through Department of DGS and not have any involvement of Department of Information Technology. Whereas as amended in the House, cyber policy as rained down through DO-IT would have to infiltrate procurement as well. There's language on lines 30 and 31 that indicates that there's a cybersecurity strategy. This language is intended to distinguish the information technology master plan from the cybersecurity master plan, to clarify that those two are in fact different. And this may have been a drafting error on page 22, lines 11 and line 17. Instead of consulting with the Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council, there is a coordination between the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. The Maryland Cybersecurity Coordinating Council would be codified through this bill, not in existence yet. Well, it's not codified yet, whereas Maryland Cybersecurity Council is a codified entity, works with Department of Information Technology, folks in the private sector on cybersecurity aims. The mission and the responsibilities of the Cybersecurity Council are a little broader because the stakeholders are more involved in the Cybersecurity Coordinating Council.
Just to add some historical context, Senator Lee, last year, we passed Senate Bill 49. Most of this language comes from Senate Bill 49, and she had, as the chair of the Maryland Cybersecurity Council, we had written in the Attorney General. The Attorney General asked that we switch this from the Attorney General to the council.
Okay. So there was language as well that said that cybersecurity, managed cybersecurity services, the procurement of which had to go through Department of Information Technology. This goes back to the procurement piece. That is going to stay with Department of General Services. That's a little bit of nuance that Department of General Services objected to as well. So this portion of the amendments will address that concern. So executive branch agencies, if you recall, have to submit reports to the Office of Security Management on cybersecurity, staff, budget, information technology vulnerabilities, capacities into the cloud. All of the information technology information that they have has to be submitted to the Office of Security Management. And so the time frame of this has moved from 1 year to 2 years, the intervals in which they have to report. There was a portion of the reporting requirement that state executive branch agencies had to submit to the Office of Security Management that included information on modernization of information technology. That is removed. My hunch is that that is because there is a bill moving through Budget and Tax that's focused specifically on modernization of information technology. There is centralization strategy language that is uncodified towards the end of the bill. That references the executive branch agencies having to certify
Ms.
that they.
Foxworth, about where are you in the,
This is on, I kind of jumped
Okay.
heavily.
That's
This is
fine.
the unpaged, yeah, we took quite a leap. So
Between-
this is after page 40
okay,
and before page 41.
great, thank you.
So the executive branch agencies are required to certify that they meet minimum cybersecurity standards that will be reviewed by independent auditors, requires the findings to be remedied. So this is different from the carve-out entities that also have to conform to federal NIST standards, National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is a little different. So this is all executive branch agencies that have to showcase that they meet minimum standards through Department of Information Technology. So there's a key distinction between the certification entities. And the certification will be reviewed by an independent auditing team. Requires the findings to be remedied. And if the Office of Security Management the Office of Security Management is authorized to take over responsibility if the findings that the independent auditing team discovered aren't remedied by July 1st of 2024, unless the transfer of the takeover is prohibited by federal law or federal regulation. So this is the intent to give the centralization language a little bit of motive, of teeth, if you will, because the House bill, as it was amended, removed the transfer of cybersecurity and information technology staff that would have, as drafted, gone or been placed under Department of Information Technology. Department of Legislative Services is required to hire an external contractor by October 1st of this year, and they will be responsible solely for auditing the Department of Information Technology. Then after that, there will be a yearly audit that has to begin on December 1st of 2023.
Okay, I think we should point out, to put everything on the table, this last section is somewhat of an 800-pound gorilla. Well, I think in centralizing authority if they don't comply, essentially. On the middle of, I think, as I read it, isn't that what it does? And I didn't mean to be pejorative about that. And in some ways, it gets back to our discussion on 1202, if the plan didn't meet minimum standards, where there was discussion of what happens if they don't do that. As I read this, it says that DO-IT can take over the other agencies if they don't comply with a number of things by a date certain. And
Thank you very much for the question.
Yep.
As originally drafted, it was taking over the staff and the systems. What this is saying is basically what happened now after the attack of the Maryland Department of Health. It's basically saying that if they don't meet these minimum standards, which they're required to by law, then there are several things that can happen. The agency can take over not their staff, but the management of their cybersecurity through a shared service agreement, which is already done for like 30% of the smaller agencies. Or it can remove their administrative privileges. For some of you who have county health departments who are currently riding on Network Maryland, they're going through this process right now. They have to prove that they are in minimum compliance with the state standards in order to get their administrative privileges back onto the system. And then, so it gives you those two choices. And, I think, quite frankly, as Senator Washington, pointed out during the hearing, that we have to close these loopholes. And it's in the best interest of the state that we shut off the access if they're not in minimum compliance. And I just wanted to also point out that minimum compliance is really, really low. And I'll send you guys an email with what that is, but this is giving them a really long time to meet minimum compliance. So that means they would be not complying with the law from now until July 1, 2024, if they're not in compliance. So with all due respect, 800-pound gorilla, I might say 150-pound gorilla. It came in as an 800-pound gorilla. This has dialed it back significantly, and perhaps you might like DO-IT to talk to this point.
let me just, you mentioned the health department, but the health department, it was after a hack. This, as I read it, is prior to a hack. I think there are little apples and oranges. I think they stepped in, the health department, after there was whatever we want to call it. Some called a hack, some called an event or,
Incident.
or a blackmail, or whatever it was. But this says, if you aren't up to snuff that we expect, we can take these steps. So it's a little different than, I think, the health department.
It's a little bit different than the health department. However, the tool that the CISO currently has right now in our statute, in the executive order, if the CISO finds that they are not in minimum compliance, he can cut them off. This is giving them a timeline, and it's giving them another means, a shared service agreement. So it's. Thank you very much.
But it does bring back on 1202. I mean, if a local county, a local school system, a local whatever doesn't meet the minimum standards, should they come in and take over? And, or require them to either, shall assume responsibility for that that subdivision, cybersecurity through a shared service agreement, or access to notwithstanding. So I'm not sure they're very different.
So thank you. There was, I've tried to limit my comments to the extent possible, but on the other bill, there was some confusion. There's certification to minimum requirements, and then there is also the review of the assessments and the review of the response plans. There are three different things. My understanding is that as drafted in 1202, the local units of government are required to certify minimum compliance. And in my conversations with Do It, they can do so by, there will be a form, they'll check off the things on the form, and they'll have to send those to Do It, or they can be cut off. And I said, well, isn't that horrible? And in my conversations, I was told that actually, like Howard County Health Department chooses not to ride on Network Maryland. So there is another choice for these agencies if they don't want to comply with very, very baseline standards.
I think the question becomes, if somebody stays out of the system and is hacked, it still becomes a statewide responsibility to some degree. And rather than just staying out of the system, should Do It be able to take them over, just like we're doing with the agencies? So I think there's a little of a parallelism here, maybe not exact, but anyway, I had Senator Carrozza followed by Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Hester and all the partners. Thank you. I know this has been a tremendous effort. I wanted to ask Senator Hester, because I know with the various versions of the bill that there was concern from the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Transportation on, I think, an original proposal to actually move the staff. And my understanding of the concern was that that could affect law enforcement agencies. And then with MDOT, it could also have some federal ramifications with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So I was trying to understand with the current proposal if this centralization addresses, the revised centralization addresses those concerns, and if especially concerned about the kind of the impacts with law enforcement and Homeland Security.
Thank you for the question. And once again, the bill as drafted was not quite consistent with our intent. I have met with both of those agencies, and their concern was in the stuff that has been crossed out at the bottom. I can't tell what page this is. But in the uncodified language near the bottom on line 24, where it says Section 4, and then it goes on page 41 to Section 5, that was very concerning language, and that has been struck. And so in the new language, it simply says that if they're not in compliance with minimum standards, we have a big problem.
I agree.
And so I'm like 99% certain that MDOT and Department of Public Safety are in compliance. But if they were not in compliance, they would have 18 months to get their act together. And then what would happen is that they would either have to enter in a shared service agreement with Do It, which would be negotiated, or their administrative privileges on the network would be taken over. And then there's another line that says, notwithstanding any federal law or regulation that forbids the Office of Security Management from managing a specific system. So that is there because in other states that have done this, so other states have actually transferred staff. They have transferred systems. We heard from North Dakota, we heard from Vermont. I mean, big states and small states, red states and blue states, they've done this. But they did it with this clause, so the stuff is either then managed by the federal government regulations or by the state regulations. So in my opinion, they should welcome this language, but it's a great question. Thank you so much.
There's also, I guess, budget, typically what we do when someone isn't in compliance, the first thing is that they do hold back some amount of, essentially it's a fine, but they hold back some budget, some appropriation. And I guess we're doing that in the blueprint. Did they think about that as a, so a first step could be sort of holding back some money. The second one is jumping off, pulling off the system.
As chair of the joint committee, as co-chair of the joint committee on cybersecurity and budget, every year, I look at all the audit reports, and any agency that has repeat cybersecurity or PII findings, we restrict 100 grand.
And then,
Until they have talked with DeWitt. That initiates the conversation. But that's even, like, I mean, that is not minimum security, standards.
Gotcha.
And I think that this is a very reasonable,
and are the
like,
standards are they in the bill? Are they listed, or is it something that you're able to?
the standards, I think, could be sent to us by DeWitt.
I can send them to you.
Yeah.
That
No,
would be very helpful.
I like it as well. I mean, I don't oppose. I'm just trying to think about, yeah, I mean, at some point, yes, we're either safe or we're not safe. And I guess, so they're taken off the system. Will that cause any disruption?
Oh, that's exactly what we're going through with the
Well,
Maryland Department of Health.
But the work has to still, but here's the thing, the work has to still happen, right? The agency still has to operate. They have to provide services to the public. So how do they continue to do that?
I mean, I think we've seen a massive disruption with the Maryland Department of Health, and I assume if we're doing it prior to an attack,
Yeah.
the disruption would be significantly less than what we've seen in the past 4 or 5 months.
Well,
Perhaps-
but
you
if
could
somebody's
ask-
not able to get a check, I mean, there are certain, we have to provide, the agencies are providing services every day. So if the agency is out of compliance
So,
and there's something they need to do,
so they have, in this bill, they have
Yeah.
18 months to meet an existing law, and then there's a choice, right?
right,
Either they can enter in a shared service agreement with DeWitt, so they'll continue to function, but DeWitt will be doing the
Right.
gatekeeping.
right.
Or their administrative positions, like, you know how on Facebook, you can either be like an editor or an administrator?
yeah.
So their administrative privileges would be temporarily revoked.
Okay,
So
so,
it's
but
much- I mean-
nothing so it's not like you're shutting off a valve of access.
That is the third option. That is the tool that our state CISO has currently,
Okay.
is to shut them off. And that is indeed drastic.
Right.
But in those cases, do it when they vote.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to convince myself that somehow business will continue even if the people who are, in other words, that our constituents will continue to, they won't notice the difference, that it's all just internal. Can somebody tell me if,
So,
yeah,
when this would happen, it wouldn't be the entire agency would be pulled off. It would be it would be on a system level. So one system might have to be taken off because it doesn't meet minimum
could you,
standards.
sort of everyday language, like what would be a system that would be?
Give you an example. So let's say, I don't want to say a payment portal, but a portal.
Yeah, that
yeah.
payments w-
So a
yeah.
payment portal. If it was, let's say, in violation of minimum standards, and they took this 18-month period,
So hunting licenses, for example, so who does that? Is that Department of Ag.
That's DNR,
Okay,
yes.
so say, we have a hunting license portal, and DNR has been out of compliance, warned. Okay, now,
Yes.
we're shutting down, you can't, it's, a month, 2 weeks before hunting season is about to start, there's gonna be a deluge of people who want their licenses, or their fishing licenses, or whatever. What happens?
Well, I would imagine that leading up to that, they would work with the Office of Security Management and the CISO to try to remediate those issues, whatever the issues are. And in my best knowledge, I could never imagine that that would actually happen. The CISO at this point, as this good senator has been saying, has the authority to do that
Right.
already by law, and could do that right now. But I don't believe he would ever get to that point without working with the agency to make sure that they are in compliance and not.
Right.
The problem with them not being in compliance is they are affecting, possibly in a very negative fashion, the rest of the network.
Look, I get that, but I want it to work, right? So if we haven't thought through how somebody's gonna get their hunting license or their fishing license, they're gonna be, it can ruin the whole thing. So I just wanna know that there are steps, other than cutting up, that there are steps to make sure that it is as clean as possible and that there won't be a disruption to service. I mean, it has to work that way. If we don't figure out the steps to make it work that way, then this won't work. Because someone will complain and then we'll undo the law next year,
So
the following year.
In the bill, there is a remediation period where you get that period of time, that 18, is it 18 months?
But that's,
Again, I don't have the changed version. Yes, you have that time period
Right.
to fix the issues before the CISO basically takes the red pen and,
right, but I guess I don't think what I'm asking is unusual. I want to know, once you decide to do the red pen, how do we make sure? Because you're not just punishing the you're not just,
Yes.
you're potentially punishing people that want to get their fishing license.
And
So that's what I want to understand.
I'm not sure they're saying you shut it down.
Well,
They take it over, I believe.
well, that would be the first, I mean, that, in the bill, and again, I'm speaking to what the bill says. We would, again, take it over, work with them to remediate the issues that would make us take it offline. The only reasons that we would take something offline is if it immediately affected the network.
Yeah, that's
The
the
agent-
scenario I want to understand, and you have to think through. It's like, once you make the decision to take it offline,
And
well,
that
how
is-
do you,
and
you have,
actually,
you
that
understand
then,
what
that
I'm
then
saying.
goes to
And
MDM,
don't-
that's where they step
yeah,
in.
and then- Yeah,
Sorry.
don't tell me it's not going to
Yes.
happen. Yeah, right, thank you.
So that is where MDM steps in, and that's
Okay,
the
great.
purpose of the preparedness plans as well as continuity of operations planning.
Great.
So we work with both the state agencies and local governments to do continuity of operations planning, where they identify all of their essential functions. Hunting license would be a
Yeah.
good example for DNR.
Yes.
And we work with them to put together plans and procedures for if the network goes down for any reason.
Okay.
It's hacked, they've identified it as immediate threat and taken
Right.
it offline.
Yes.
So obviously, it wouldn't be as convenient as the online portal would be for individuals, but in the event of either an attack or an imminent threat that deems an immediate threat to the network and decided to take that essential function offline, it's our responsibility to work with the state agencies to make sure they have a plan in place to carry on those functions
Okay.
when that network is not available.
So in other words, there's not a wait room you could put them in where they're in their own network and that things can continue operating?
That's a technical question.
Yes, there is, and
Okay.
that is something, and I can't get that technical
Why
into
not?
it, but, because I'm not a cybersecurity
Oh, I see.
professional.
Okay.
I apologize, but, yeah, exactly. But no, there is a way to cordon off,
Right.
a certain system.
Right, okay.
And so that, but the problem is, at certain times, they will not be able to use that system. So we would do and I will say this again, we will do everything imaginably possible to not shut down the system, not take them off of the network. And I know and that will be an absolute last resort.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Look,
just think we have to
Senator-
figure that out.
Senator,
Yeah.
look, we saw what happened with the health department. A lot of people wanted licenses, were inconvenienced for 3 months. Hopefully, they don't learn some lessons, and it will have a workaround, but they can't guarantee there won't be some inconvenience during that period of time when it's a direct threat to the whole system. I think that's what we're hearing today.
Yes, sir.
Well, no, I'm not hearing that they have figured out a workaround.
Well, and.
So that's what I would want to hear. Before we say in law that we're going to cut something off, we need to have, and now, even if we say in the bill, something that you have to, have a workaround, but, yeah, you have to have a way to do it.
Yeah,
And it sounds
but
like-
Senator,
Yeah.
whether this bill passes or not, if we get attacked, that's the same problem we will have again. And hopefully, they're not waiting, and there are some lessons learned from the health department attack. But, I mean, that situation exists with this bill or without this bill. And again, I'm not here to defend do it, but the objective reality is if a system is hacked or an event happens and it threatens the whole system, they got to take whatever actions they need to do to minimize that threat as quickly as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And just each agency, and they currently do it, they do it year-round, works with MDEM to have those plans in place. As Anna just said, for no matter what reason they go offline or something else terrible happens, they have to have continuity plans that help them continue their processes.
There will be, it's shut down, and then this says, under, the online portal, there will be some type of notice that the portal is temporarily down for whatever, and then something very soon will then allow people to get their hunting licenses or their, my Easy Pass, pay for my Easy Pass because I'm getting ready to go visit my mom or whatever, so,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Senator,
Okay.
that
That is
on a
what
case-by-case basis, it would be different.
Yeah.
But in that sense, yes, that's exactly what would happen. It happened with the Department of Health.
Right.
And yes, there were a lot of systems that we had to send out notices.
Right.
And then work through processes on different ways to serve the public.
Okay, let's go to the Vice Chair. We can come back to you, Senator Washington.
No, it's
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, a couple of questions, some related to where Senator Washington was going, but some different. Is it self-identified? I'm in compliance, my agency, my department, we're good? Or are there inspections, and can you talk about that? What sort of accountability?
Now, currently, we have assessments going on of each agency. Now, are you talking about local governments or agencies?
Yes, both.
Both.
I mean, I think the concept is really important.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. At this point, I believe the bill is written so that local governments only have to certify to us that they are in compliance. That I do not believe that we assess them currently in this bill.
Okay, so.
Agencies, I apologize.
Please.
Agencies, we do certify. I mean,
Okay.
sorry, we do assess.
So, Ms. Foxworth, maybe you could add this to the list of issues that we're going to want to explore between now and Friday. I never quote Ronald Reagan, but he said, "Trust but verify." And I think that's not wrong. This is important, and I don't think someone either well-intentioned or, oops, I don't want to get fired, or I think I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not, or something, says, yeah, we're good, and maybe they're not. And so And again, Anna Sierra knows, I mean, there are annual inspections of our 911, our 24 911 centers to make sure that the books are right, that the systems are right, that the training is right and all that. And I think some sort of inspection or accountability would be important. So that's question number one, and I am interested to learn more about that. And then second, following up on where Senator Washington might have been going, and I don't know whether so we do want COOP plans. We do want continuity of government. We do need to be able to make sure the trains still run on time, either literally or figuratively. But we also don't want to keep entities on the system, on the network, that make the entire state network vulnerable. Is there such a thing, and I am making this up, and maybe this is even a question you shouldn't even answer in public, so I give you permission to kind of skirt it or whatever. But if there's like the network and the well-behaved agencies are all on the network and they've been inspected and they're all doing good stuff, and maybe there's like a detention room, smaller network, other network, where you can still get your fishing license, you can still pay your Easy Pass, but if you're screwing up, you're not endangering the big network. Is there such a thing, or has that ever been explored, discussed, or does it exist?
I cannot answer that question. I honestly don't know. So I'm not going to say that I'm afraid to answer the question. I don't know. I can ask Chip Stewart, our CISO,
Yeah.
if that is possible, if that's something that we've thought about. I don't believe it's in existence, but I don't know that it can't be done. So that's what I'll just say.
So I'd love to hear if Senator Hester has a thought on that, but it just seems like it would be easier to cut off and take decisive action from an agency or department that might be not quite ready for prime time without disadvantaging our residents, customers, and small businesses, nonprofits, and stuff who rely on that agency by not fully cutting them off, but removing the threat and the vulnerability.
Yes.
Okay.
I will also skirt the exact answer to that question, but I can tell you that was my intention in drafting under section 5, number 2.
Which, are we still in 1346 now?
Yes, on
What
page,
page?
I think it's 40, where it says if an agency has not remediated within 18 months, then DoIT will assume responsibility for the shared service agreement or administrative privileges. And so by switching the administrative privileges on the network, that, in a sense, slaps their hand and says, you're not in control of posting on Facebook anymore.
Right, but I'm talking about something a little different.
No, I
So-
know, I was just saying that great minds think alike.
Okay.
I appreciate your waiting room, but that was indeed part of the intention of having a halfway point
Sure.
when I drafted that.
So Senator Washington talked about a waiting room. I'm doing something a little better constructed than that, and not putting them out in Siberia, but putting them in a place where they can still function, but they're kind of, the island for, what is the Peter Pan? Island for wayward boys, or whatever that is.
Senator, we just don't know if they can do it. So
Okay.
it's been
So to
floated to
speak.
them, and they will check into it.
I'd love to learn more.
I want to go back to the potential parallelism of the local jurisdictions, school boards, counties, municipalities, whatever. If they don't meet the minimum standards, obviously, we can take them off the network, but they're going to be even more vulnerable to attacks, which I don't think anybody wants. We don't want to reward bad behavior, but we also, people will potentially suffer, students, adults, whatever. And I guess my question to you is if you support what's in 1346 of assuming responsibility through, of course, a shared service agreement, would you be willing to also assume responsibility for local counties, municipalities, school systems if they don't meet the minimum standards?
That's very much a policy question, and we would have the ability to do that. I'll leave it at that. Would we want to? Are we going to take over a county that is in?
Well, nobody wants to.
Right. It's just very much a policy question that I don't know if I should answer.
Okay, but if you're not answering that, I assume in 1346, you're also not answering whether you want to assume that responsibility, and it's a policy question?
For taking over agencies?
Yes.
We have the authority to do that if they are not meeting minimum standards now. Chip, the CISO has the authority to take them off of the network as is. So he already has that authority by law, by the executive order, excuse me.
And is that still in place?
Yes, currently, yes.
And I guess then with the agencies, I mean, taking them off network gets them off network and doesn't threaten other agencies.
Yes.
But it potentially leaves people who utilize that agency by suffering as well.
So, yes, the people who, and it's those systems. We keep saying agencies as if we're taking an entire, we would be taking an
Right,
entire
it could be a
agency.
partial, it could be a
Exactly. It
department.
could be a very small system. Most of
Understood.
the time, it is a very small system. But yes, it would affect, there would be those effects on constituents, absolutely.
Okay. Back to Senator Washington.
Well, I want to thank the chair and the vice chair for reiterating and building on what the concern was. And I understand that perhaps I'm not using the language that you use, but I guess I want to just repeat that prior, I think for me to feel very comfortable with being able to just cut the system off, and even if it's a simple, I guess you're thinking of it as the application, and it's not the agency. But for us, the agency, so if the agency delivers hunting licenses for all, for the public, that is the agency, right? So even if it's a large agency that provides multiple services, and you're just cutting down one service, it's still thought of as the agency. So in contemplating the taking over, the shutting it off, there needs to be a way that delivery can continue. Now, there's a number of scenarios. There could perhaps be, a grand system that you really are, it's like, it's directing. Like I had a website that got a bunch of malware, but I wanted to, we couldn't fix it, so we did a new one, but now it points, if somebody goes to my old website, it now goes to the new one. And they don't even know, they don't really know the difference. There's a little bit of a lag, but, so it would be at the very least that type of interface where the consequence for the failing to adhere and to failing to keeping the entire system safe is visited, on the people responsible for maintaining the safety of that system, and not the individuals who use that. So hopefully that's clearer.
Yes, it
Okay,
is. And
great. Yeah, so let's figure out how to do that.
yes, no, absolutely. And as the chair has stated quite a few times, we've learned many lessons from the health department
Yeah.
issues, and we've been working on those type of workarounds
Yeah.
with MDEM
Yeah.
constantly over the last few
And then
years.
it'd be an awesome one, and I think most people would feel much more comfortable with this kind of what might be perceived as a draconian but necessary step.
Right.
And you say, look, we're confident because, as the vice chair said, you didn't just trust them, they gave a report and said, hey, we got it, we're good. You actually tested it. It's like, okay, we're gonna shut you down and test this. So that has to be a part of it.
Okay.
Cool. Thank
That concludes this walkthrough. Thank you all. We're going to take it up Friday after our alcohol bills, and we'll probably need some alcohol after we deal with this as well. We're going to vote a couple of items. Senator?
I just really wanted to thank everybody who's here and acknowledge that Kevin Canale, on behalf of MACO, was part of all the interim work groups. And we also have with us Ben Yellen from the Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security, who authored the report. And I just wanted to thank you all, in addition to everybody who spoke, for being here and working so collaboratively.
We're going to vote one or two bills. Okay, we're going to start with 227. Well,
House Bill 227, State Government Legal and Employee Holiday, Juneteenth, National Independence Day. This bill establishes Juneteenth, National Independence Day as an employee legal holiday and an employee holiday on June 19th.
it's been moved and seconded on the bill on the Juneteenth National Independence Day. Is there a cross file?
No, it's not.
Okay. Any discussion?
Good bill.
Okay. Would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? Seeing not, I'm sorry, Senator?
Senator Ellis wanted to be president, I had to get him in.
Okay. Would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? Seeing none, it is an 8 to 3 vote. 8-0-3. Simon, Eric Gallion, Hester, not here. Oh,
Senator Hester?
Senator?
Senator Hester? Do you want to be recorded in the affirmative on Juneteenth?
Okay. Okay, next bill, HB 17.
House Bill 17, Campaign Finance, Recurring Contributions and Donations Requirements. This bill requires a person who solicits a recurring contribution for a political committee or a recurring donation for an independent expenditure or electioneering communication to receive the affirmative consent of the contributor or donor for the recurring contribution or donation. If a person violates the requirement, the State Board of Elections is authorized to impose a civil penalty of up to $500 for each violation. There are no amendments, and there was no opposition.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. This the one that does not allow passive checkoff for recurring contributions. It's got to be an active to do that, like for an Act Blue or whatever. Discussion. Discussion. Would anybody like to be recorded in the negative? If not, that'll be recorded as a 902 on HB 17. 147.
House Bill 147, Maryland Farms and Families Fund, Maryland Food and Agricultural Resiliency Mechanism Grant Program, and Maryland Farm to School Meal Grant Pilot Program, alterations and establishment. This is the bill that alters the purpose and use of the Maryland Farms and Families Fund, establishes the Maryland Food and Agricultural Resiliency Mechanism Grant Program and an associated special fund, and establishes the Maryland Farm to School Meal Grant Pilot Program and associated special fund. This is the cross-file of Senate Bill 121, which passed the Senate unanimously. However, there are a couple of differences in the House bill. So if you look in your voting packet on page 8, you'll see the first difference. The House reduced the mandatory appropriation. This is for the Maryland Farm Fund from $1.25 million to $200,000. The Senate had kept it at $1.25 million. Also on page 9, the House version of the bill does not include that language that this committee added about the meals that the school district expects to offer. The Senate had added based on the previous fiscal year's meal count, just to clarify.
That was important.
Any others?
Nope, those are the only two only two differences.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee? The meal count's important, I think.
And I think the money is, because if it's not all used, it always drops at the bottom line. I move that we amend the House bill to the Senate bill.
Is there a second? It's been seconded. Discussion? Any objection to that motion? Seeing none, duly noted, 902. Let's go to 855, then we'll do 513. It's a crossfire. Last one on the list, it's a crossfire of 942.
Give me just a second. So House Bill 855, Urban Agriculture, Water and Power Infrastructure Grant Program and Fund Establishment. This is the bill, it's the cross-file of Senate Bill 942, which I believe also passed this committee and this body unanimously, establishes the Urban Agriculture, Water and Power Infrastructure Grant Program with the Maryland Department of Agriculture. The stated purpose of the program is to increase the viability of urban farming and community gardens and improve access to urban-grown foods. To support the program, the bill establishes the Urban Agriculture, Water, and Power Infrastructure Grant Fund and requires the governor for fiscal 2024 through 2027 to include in the annual budget bill a general fund appropriation of $500,000 to the fund. The only difference here, this is on page 20 of the bill. You may recall that so this is actually, sorry, page 20 of your voting packet. I've actually included a copy of the Senate bill here because the House just passed the bill clean. We had adopted language saying that instead of an urban area being defined however the Department of Agriculture wants it to, that it should be delineated as an urban area by the U.S. Census Bureau.
Question is, which one is broader in definition? The urban area of the state is defined by department, or the urban area by the U.S. Census? Do you know that?
So the department hasn't defined anything yet because this bill doesn't exist yet. So the department could define it as broadly or as narrowly as they want to under the bill.
Okay, thank you.
What's the pleasure? Senator Washington?
Doing the census, because that's a standard that everyone understands, and it's not, it's changeable. Yeah, so I move it, yeah.
Conform it to the Senate version. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Discussion? Senator?
The motion is to conform it to the Senate.
Use delineated
Okay,
as an
yes,
urban
yeah.
area.
Okay, that's fine.
Any discussion, any objection? Seeing none, 902, that'll be recorded as such. And finally, 513, Ms. Goodman.
House Bill 513, Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services Program, established. This bill establishes the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services Program within the Maryland State Department of Education's Division of Early Childhood. The program is intended to promote positive mental and behavioral health practices for young children. Beginning in the fiscal 2024, the governor must include an appropriation of $3 million in the annual state budget for the program. There are two amendments. The first is in your packet, starting on page 12. This amendment, essentially this bill codifies an existing program, and as drafted, there were some concerns of whether it actually was doing that or making changes to how the program operated. So these amendments from Senator Kagan, they fix those deficiencies, and what that does is clarifies that the program will be administered by the division within MSDE, and they're not really making the decisions that it seemed to the way it was previously drafted. It provides that the division may accept certain referrals for enrollment in the program, which is the existing practice, and it specifies that the program may award certain grants. MSD has requested, and this was in their testimony, that we strike references to the division and just substitute department because they're contemplating making some reorganization in the department and aren't sure whether that division will survive.
Pleasure of the committee. Discussion, thoughts?
Favorable as amended. Move the bill.
Okay. House Bill 513 is moved and it is seconded. Then the vice chair wants to move the first set of amendments, the Kagan amendments. Is there a second? There's a second. Any objection to adopting the Kagan amendments? Seeing none, and there's a second one?
So the department requested striking mentions of the division specifically and just substituting department because they're contemplating reorganizing and they're not sure that that particular name or division will be there when
Okay.
they reorganize.
Any objection to that? Seeing not, we adopt the administration's amendment. So the bill as amended is before us. Discussion. Seeing none, seeing no red lights or no hands going up, I will record it as a 9-0-2 vote, and that'll go to the floor as such. And we have one pre-concurrence as our last bit of business today. Ms. Morton.
All right, so this is Senate Bill 541, Natural Resources, Maryland Park Service and State Parks Alterations, the Great Maryland Outdoors Act. Again, what we are being asked to consider right now is the House amendments to the Senate bill. The bill is currently on second reading. So we're doing this just a little bit in advance to keep the bill moving potentially. Ian is passing around a copy of the amendments right now. But as a reminder, so this is the bill that makes various changes to state law affecting the Maryland Park Service, parks in the state, land conservation, and state lakes relating to funding for parks, land conservation, and state lakes, protection and restoration, park rangers, staff, and volunteers, management of parks and park infrastructure, and new parks and amenities and other considerations. So what the House amendments do, first, they specifically authorize funds available for capital improvements to be used for disabled access, including providing adult changing tables. You can see that's on the first page of these amendments. They also increased the annual mandated appropriation to the Mel Noland Woodlands Incentives and Fellowship Fund to $1 million beginning in fiscal year 2024. So that's on pages 2 through 3. Right now, currently, the mandatory appropriation is just $50,000 a year. And finally, the amendments require the Department of Natural Resources to establish the Port Deposit State Historical Park as a partnership park. So that's basically page 3 through the end of the amendments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think, before I make a motion or we discuss it, on the amendments, page 3 of 6, in 3 places on the lower half of the page, and at the top middle of page 4, it all says Port of Deposit, State Historical Park, and I assume it's Port Deposit.
Anybody know?
I looked it up. I mean, Port Deposit is Port Deposit. There's not Port of Deposit.
For amendment. No, we can't. The House has got its own third reader.
They could amend it on third reader.
Yeah, and we should just say we're okay with removing the of.
I don't know, it sounds pretty good. I'd like a recorded vote on removing the word of, please.
Wait, but we're moving a Senate bill, though, right?
There's a second session tonight. The House hasn't finished it.
That would be a technical amendment, so we don't need to vote on that. I will note it for the House and see if they can fix it through a floor amendment.
Okay, so,
No, it's also on page 5 at the bottom.
I will tell them to look for it throughout.
Sorry.
so
That's okay.
do we care what happens to the Senate bill? Or we can't do anything?
This is the Senate
This is
bill.
a Senate bill. It's still in the House. We're doing it in advance.
The House can amend the bill in third reader,
Right,
and we
Okay.
don't need to sign off. That would be a technical corrective change if they make it at all, so we don't need to worry specifically about that change. I will note it for them, though. I will flag it.
okay, I assume the motion, someone will make as a concurrence? Oh, please.
Page 3, it's about the funding, going from 50,000 to $1 million. Do we need B&T sign off?
So B&T is actually primary on this bill, so they have already voted to concur.
Thank you for that information.
I assume the motion is to concur, and there's a second somewhere. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the concurrence. Seeing no conversation, no red lights, then we'll record it as a 9-0-2 concurrence with the budget and tax recommendation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our business for today. We have not, I haven't taken time on clean cross files yet. We can do that anytime. We'll get to them. I was just taking care of other piece of legislation first. There may be a short session, a voting session tomorrow. We might have some concurrences. Just keep awake for that. Senate President said they're expecting 2 sessions tomorrow to finish them for presentment. They want to get to the governor the last 5, 10, or 20 bills. So that's what we have for now. I think they know we have our social engagement tomorrow. I don't know if any other committees are having, and JPR as well, so that's half the chamber. That's all I have. Anybody else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you for your work.